Welcome to Brave with Lisa. This space is designed to inspire, champion, and equip you to bravely walk in that unique rhythm of grace and calling that God has designed just for you. I'm so excited you're joining us today. Hi, welcome to Brave with Lisa. My name is Lisa Bruton, and it is so good to be back. I've had 2 weeks break from podcasting because I've been over in Italy running a retreat over there on the Amalfi Coast, and it was absolutely stunning. And we had this villa that was like built into the side of a cliff. So we had our own villa, and it had like its own lemon garden and swimming deck, and we had the restaurant all to ourselves, and we were absolutely spoiled. And we had women from all around the world come to it. So we had 12 ladies fly in, and you know what? It was just incredible. The first day that we got together, we just shared about what was going on in our world and why God brought us to this retreat. And it was just incredible hearing all these stories, and I was so aware of just how vastly different everyone was. And I remember thinking, God, how are you going to make this retreat work and bring unity and just flow as you flow? And yet he did. He just was exquisite. And, you know, there's something powerful about stopping and having fun. And what we found was that as we just, instead of striving and performing or just trying to make God speak to us, you know how sometimes we're like, right, I'm going to fast, I'm going to do this. And, but actually just resting in him and having fun. And, you know, in Italy, you absolutely have to go with the flow because you can't make too many set schedules because it just doesn't work over there. And so we just all learnt just to relax and let go. And God just moved in hearts, spoke clearly, very big revelations. Some had dreams, like downloads of how to walk out a dream. Some had deep healing. Others, yeah, just, it was very special. So anyway, that's why I've been off air for the last 2 weeks, and I'm so excited to be back. Today, I just really felt like God wanted to do something super simple and powerful, and it's really about the heart. Because as we know, you know, the wellspring of life comes from the heart. So of course, that's one of God's most treasured and things about us, you know, is our heart. Not what we do, not what we achieve, but actually our heart. And I had this dream maybe about 2 years ago now. And sometimes God speaks to me in dreams and I'll hear his audible voice. It doesn't happen often. And when it does, I really pay attention. So this dream, God spoke to me in it. And so I was asleep. And he said to me, and as I'm sleeping, Lisa, your heart is leaking and it's at 40%. And he repeated that a few times. So I also find for me in dreams, God will repeat himself. So that's what he said to me. Your heart is leaking and it's at 40%. And he then gave me the impression in my heart, you know, like, so he spoke those words, but then I got an understanding that if my heart is not able to carry all that he has for me, nothing comes from, like, I can't do things from overflow. I'm always having to go to him and get topped up. I don't know if that's making sense. So for example, if our heart's running at 30 or 40%, and everything else is leaking out, just means we're more tired and maybe irritable. We're not in his rest as much. It'll flow over into all areas of our life as well. But when our hearts are not leaking and we're able to like receive the fullness of his love, then that overflows into everything. And that's what he wants for us, you know, like to fill our hearts up to overflowing, and it flows over into our relationships, into where we put our what we put our hands to, So what I felt to do today was actually give you space to ask God questions about your heart and ask him if there's any leaks in your heart and at what percentage is it at. So when I had this dream and he said, yeah, Lisa, your heart's at 40%. I'm like, where is it leaking? And he showed me that there were lies that I was believing and that creates a leak. He showed me that I actually needed to forgive myself. And so there was unforgiveness towards myself in my heart. He showed me that there was comparison. He showed me that there was trauma. What else? Just relationship wounds from friendships, striving, that perfectionism. So he just started to it didn't feel overwhelming either. It felt more like he sees me. And when he shows us the leaks in our heart, it means that there's healing and that there's freedom as well. So he's actually wanting to heal those areas of our hearts so we can trust him as he brings things to mind. So today we're going to look at where are there leaks in our hearts. So first of all, we start really simply, as always. And I just would encourage you to close your eyes now and picture Jesus. And again, I do that because that means my eyes are on him. I'm blocking out the rest of the world, but also I know I'm safe. And so whether you can see him, whether you can sense he's with you, or you just trust that he's there with you, we're going to start to ask him some questions. So picture him and just say, Jesus, is my heart leaking? Are there any leaks in my heart? And if he says yes, just ask him, where is it leaking? Can you show me, God? And just take note of what he's saying. And even ask him, at what percentage is my heart at today, Lord? So even yesterday, I asked God what percentage was my heart at, and he said 75%. And he just showed me some lies that I'm still believing and some fears that I have. And it was great because we were able to work on that. And then once we worked on that and and gave him room to move in my heart and to heal it, I was then able to take some courageous steps and send out some emails, but also get my feet back firmly on the ground. And I could see clearly where he was leading me in this new thing I'm about to do. So even that, I find when we do work on our heart and lean into him and allow and give him permission to move, we find our feet back on solid ground and courage and clarity. And so that's what I believe he's wanting to do and bring to you today. So if you need to pause this now and just again ask him, Lord, can you bring to mind areas of my heart that are leaking? And what percentage is my heart at? Now, I felt God highlight 5 different areas of leaking or leaks that we can look at today. And it's more just to give you some context and also practical ways of asking him questions and inviting him into areas of our hearts to heal it. So first of all, let's look at jealousy and comparison. So if that came up, then God's just wanting to bring your attention to it because that's not how we're to live. But what I find is when there's jealousy and comparison in our hearts, and that can be, it doesn't have to be like this overwhelming green-eyed monster. It could just be a little catch in your heart when you see someone doing well or taking off or having something that you really wanted. So what I do when that catches in the heart, I'm like, oh, okay, Lord, what exactly is it that I'm wanting, or what's the thing that's making me feel jealous? What's the thing that yeah, I guess that I'm coveting? And more often than not, it's about something that God has for you. It's more often something that that is a promise for you and that you want. And so it's a permission to want that and to ask God for that. And so kind of turning it and going, well, so for example, say you see someone taking off on a holiday, a beautiful holiday, and you're like, oh, so jealous. That's because it's time to start planning a holiday and asking God about it. And yeah, so allowing those catches in the heart to actually be catalysts to what God has for you. So the other thing that comes with jealousy and comparison is that actually we're probably believing lies about what God has for us or doesn't have for us, and lies about ourselves. So for example, if again, we're in the area of jealousy and comparison, and we can say to God, God, are there lies that I'm believing about myself? And it could be that you believe that you would never measure up, or you could never, or God doesn't have that for you, or you don't receive blessings, or whatever it may be. He will bring it to mind. And then we just ask him, well, what's the truth? And give him the lie and receive the truth. And you can do that with, are there any lies that I'm believing about you, God? And it could be that believing that he wouldn't do that for us, and that he's not going to keep his promise. And just asking him, well, Lord, what is the truth? And the truth will be, I'm a promise keeper, and I have more for you than you can ever imagine. And so do you see how God just starts to shift the jealousy and comparison into truth and permission to have desires and wants and dreams and bring them to him? And so now that leak has become something exciting in your heart. No longer is it jealousy and comparison. It's actually full of hope and truth and dreaming. How cool is that? So the next area that I felt he wanted to speak about that can cause leaks in the heart is relationship wounds. So relationship wounds could be from like romantic relationships, or they can be friendships or relationships in family. As we share our hearts with people, we can have them we can have wounds. And I think all of us have had wounds from relationships, and we've also caused wounds. And so what happens when we allow the relationship wounds to not heal or to fester is that we begin to build our own protective walls around our hearts. And so even asking God around that, like, God, have I built some protective walls around my heart? And for me, I had built protective walls around my heart, but they were self-protection rather than God's protection of my heart. And so there was some healing that was needed. So first of all, it's, God, will you come into this area? Will you come into this wound in my heart from relationships and heal it? I hand to you any bitterness. I hand to you any unforgiveness that I have towards someone, and just work on, if there is some unforgiveness, I hand you that person, Jesus, and I forgive them for whatever it was. And I pray blessing over them, Lord. And also, Jesus, will you pull down my own protection, like self-protection, self-protective walls, and I want to swap them for your protection. And this would be a process, right? But what I find is I can notice a difference from when I've got a self-protective wall around my heart, is that I get offended easily, and particularly by the people who've hurt me. Or if I've got God's protection, I don't feel the arrows. I actually don't. Even though they're throwing them at me, it doesn't hit the mark. It doesn't hit my heart, and I don't get offended, and it doesn't bog me down. And so that's when I can tell I've got self-protective walls or whether I've got God's protection around my heart. And so just doing some work around that, and just, you can even ask him, God, can you show me if I've built my own wall, like my own self-protective walls around my heart, and then give him permission to come and remove it and replace it with his protection. And I believe this is actually quite a big one and an important one as well, because as we allow God to heal our hearts and to swap the self-protective walls for his own protection, it creates room for healthy relationships. And I know that I really believe that God wants to bring in new connections as well. And until we've done work in our heart in those areas of relationship wounds, we don't really have a healthy room for God connections. And I feel like that's pivotal in this time, is to have his connections, and be ready for them so that we can nurture those relationships and those connections. So that's one that I felt was quite important to look out. The other one is actually unforgiveness of yourself. So I really had to forgive myself for things, and it wasn't like the really bad things. It was more like forgiving myself for being naive or not seeing things as they were, or not having courage, or not standing up for this person, or whatever it may be. I find that we can be our hardest critic, and that forgiving ourselves is something really powerful. So just taking the time and just saying, Jesus, do I need to forgive myself? He'll let you know. And then just go through the process of like, I forgive myself for XYZ. And I hand that to you, Jesus. And actually, do you have something for me? Do you want to tell me something about me? And that's also beautiful as well, because no longer are we keeping ourselves, no longer are we punishing ourselves, but we're giving it to God and receiving his grace and his truth over us. So I find forgiving ourselves is quite a big key. The other one that was big for me and a big leak in my heart, and potentially for you as well, not saying it is, but it might be, is striving. So striving can look in like so many different ways. It can be wanting to be perfect. So I find that horrible measuring stick that we measure ourselves up against, that we can never measure up to, right? So for me, I wanted to be like the perfect wife, the perfect mom, the perfect speaker, the perfect businesswoman. Like I had these very high expectations on myself, and I held myself up to an unrealistic standard. And it started to get really heavy, and it just wasn't fun. And I felt like I was failing. And so that's one indication, is if you're feeling like you're failing at things, or feeling overwhelmed or fatigued and stressed, maybe discontent as well. chances are there's an element of striving in an area of your life. And so for me, I just had to ask him, Lord, what areas am I striving in? And he showed me. And I'm like, all right, Lord, well, I really don't want to strive. I want to be in your rest. And I want to do things with your grace rather than trying to make everything happen on my own and feeling like I need to do this in order for this outcome to happen. And if I don't do it, who will do it? Is this ringing a bell to anyone? And so, and this is one I need to stay on top of. I check in quite often. It's like, am I striving anyway, Lord? And where am I not resting in your grace? And where am I not trusting you? And so they're just some indications of if you're striving. And so for me, I was like, okay, Lord, I'm going to hand you all those ridiculous measuring sticks that I try to measure up to. I'm going to hand that to you now, Jesus. And can I have your grace? And just start to list off the areas that feel weighty or where you feel like you are striving, and hand them to him. And just feel that exchange of lightness and grace come in, and peace. Now, a key for me, and I ask God this, so this is something you can ask him, is like, how do I know when I'm in your rest? How do I know when I'm resting in you in areas of my life? And he said, Lisa, you'll know you're resting in me when you're having fun. And so for me, that's the key indication when something isn't feeling fun. And I get it. Not everything has to be fun, but there'll be an element of fun to it. And if it's feeling dry and weighty, then chances are I'm not in his rest in that area. And there's some things that I'm doing that aren't actually even necessary. And so I just go to him and ask him. So even asking him, Lord, how do I know when I'm in your rest? What does it look like? What does it feel like? I think it'll be different for everyone, depending on how he's wired you. And so that's a big area, is swapping striving for his rest, for his grace. And the last one is trauma. And this one took a little longer for that leak to heal. And I'm not saying that he can't heal it straight away, but often there's a bit of a process, and it's just being brave enough to start the process and even ask questions around, okay, well, Lord, how do you want to heal me in this area of trauma? Is there someone you want me to see or share this with? And just, first of all, just say, I invite you into that area. I no longer want to keep it hidden or tucked away. I want to be whole and healthy and as you've designed my heart, and free of this trauma. And so it is just giving him permission to come into that area, and then just asking him questions. How do you want to heal? Is there a process? Are you just going to heal me straight away? And also asking, Lord, can you bring the right people into my world, or highlight who it is that I'm meant to meet with or share this with to begin my process? So they're just areas, just a couple of ones that God highlighted to me. But if he's highlighting others, it could be boredom, it could be exhaustion, it could be disappointment, it could be worries about finances. There could be other lies that you're believing. It's just spending time with him for him to show you the condition of your heart and where things are at, so that, and then allowing him to come in and heal those leaks. And even it's quite fun, even as you keep going back and looking at your heart with God, and saying, can you show me, what percentage am I at now? And you might find, oh, it's gone up like 30% from last week or last month. That's awesome. Thank you, Lord. And just even just saying, can you show me what it looks like? So you might even find he gives you these beautiful images about your heart or how it looks, and they could be, it could look in the form of a garden. He's so creative with you. And just know that the moment you stop and asking questions about your heart, he will answer, he will tend to your heart, because he is he's so for you. And he just like your heart is so precious to him. And so let me just pray for you, and then we'll wrap it up. But I'd love to hear from you if you have any questions, or you just want to share how this podcast, this particular one, impacted you. It's always so beautiful to hear, and I get so encouraged too. But let me pray for you. Lord, I just thank you for your tenderness. I thank you how much you love us and care for our hearts. And we just hand you our hearts now, and just thank you, Lord, that you heal those areas that have been leaking, that you give us. I thank you that you're a safe place that we can cry and laugh and relax into. And so, Lord, I thank you for who you are and how much you love us. We love you. Amen. Well, I pray that was special for you and for your heart. And please do reach out, and I'll see you here next week. Mwah. Thanks for joining me on Brave with Lisa. I hope that it has inspired or impacted you in a small or large way. Feel free to comment, to subscribe, and share with some friends. And please join us next week on another conversation we will have here on this channel on Brave with Lisa.